So, before we look at this passage, I want to give you a little look at how things are going to change. I'm going to metamorphosize on you. In the last 2 years, since our community formed, we have gone on an epic journey through the writings of Yeshua's apostles in their entirety, all the way from Matthew to Revelation. In our first year, we went through the Gospels and Acts. In the next year, we went through the remainder of the body of literature commonly called the New Testament. That was a mouthful, wasn't it? We feasted every week. And as I'm sure you remember, I was hitting a lot of points. Often when you have a message, you'll have a single point, and the speaker will take maybe half an hour to break down terms and to bring in illustrations. For us, it was more like I was taking you on a drive in a limo, a theological limo, at about 160 kilometers an hour, if not faster. Like, we were covering ground, weren't we? And for people who have active minds and who can't focus on one topic for very long, you really enjoyed it because we were like boom, 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 boom. We were bouncing all over the place. For people who like to just take one thought and then really develop it and go deep in it over the course of a solid hour, you were probably just kind of hanging on for dear life. And that isn't always the way it was, but quite often that was the way it was. And hold on 1 second here. Okay, yes, we're good. Just checking something internally. So I'm going to change gears a little bit here now. At the same time we were going over the Pentateuch, we went over the whole thing twice. I tried to focus on areas that are often overlooked, areas where pop theology would suggest one thing, but if you just read the text and you read the Bible in its entirety, it would suggest another thing. So I really tackled a lot of controversial questions, a lot of pop theology. I really tried to bring in a lot of history, because often as believers we are not very familiar with church history. We're not sure about what happened after the New Testament was written in the centuries following. We're not sure about why the Protestant Reformation happened, etc., etc. So I brought in a lot of things like that. I'm going to start changing gears here. We'll see how things go, but I'm probably going to shorten my messages a little bit. I am going to try and go a little deeper and develop concepts a little more. So instead of having like a message with 40 topics, it'll probably be more like a couple. And I'm going to break them down a little more. I'm going to go into a little more depth. And I'm going to try and bring in history and also bring in other passages from the scriptures. Because, for instance, the writings of the prophets are a real gem. They're such a, would you call it a panoply? Genevieve, is that how you'd say that word? Probably. Like, there's just such a wide spectrum of insights in the prophets, and often it's commentary on the Torah. It illustrates the Torah. And I'm reading right now through the prophets of Israel, and I love how they dovetail. So maybe you've noticed I've already begun to do that. I'm going to continue to do that because the scriptures fit together so well. I'm also going to begin talking to people who aren't in the room. People that I want to see in the room. Generally when I talk to us like we're a bunch of believers, because we are a bunch of believers. I do try and talk on a basic level. I do try and define terms if I use a fancy theological term or whatever, but at the same time I talk like we're a bunch of believers. I would like to start gearing our community to be a place where if people didn't come from a church background, or they didn't have a religious orientation, they would still be able to follow what I'm talking about. So I'm going to try and hit the basics every week. If I use fancy terms, I'm going to explain them. I'm already pretty good at using street talk, I think. I like to slang up when I'm talking about, because it's more fun for me, and hopefully it's a little more entertaining for you. So we're going to continue doing that. So that's something I'm going to be doing. So if you have neighbors or friends or coworkers or someone that you want to invite to congregation, I will endeavor to talk on a level that will engage them and that will answer questions that they might have and that won't be over their heads. I'm going to do my best to do that. And that's going to be a fun journey for me because I do have a brain that kind of thinks in certain ways that are over the heads of some people, but I'm learning to think and communicate in different ways. I've been coming to realize that communities that focus on the basics and that are strong on the basics are powerful communities. Profoundness is usually communicated in simple terms. Did you notice that? It's often the simplest things that are most profound. And I want to grow. I want to grow in that in my teaching. So two things that I'm going to try and bring in regularly in my talks, or I'm going to say, this is why this is important. I really enjoy the messages from a pastor named Mark Driscoll. He has a church in Seattle called Mars Hill. And they're doing a great job bringing people to Yeshua. They've seen literally thousands of people in Seattle, which is one of the least churched and most liberal cities in America, come to faith in Yeshua and be immersed as a profession of their faith. They're doing a great job. And I've really enjoyed hearing him preach and taking some lessons from him about that too. And one of the things he often does is he says, and this is why this is important. Because this is what the majority of the people in the world say, or because this could be in your future, stuff like that. Another thing I want to start doing more of is answering objections that will be in people's minds. So let's say you have someone in the room, or joining us on the live stream, or listening to our messages on iTunes or YouTube, because we do use those media to get the message of the Word of God out to the world. Let's say you have someone who's an atheist listening in. And I'm going to try to answer the common objections that an atheist would have, or a Muslim, or someone who doesn't believe in Yeshua and comes from one of the major ideological systems that are in vogue in the world today. So I'm going to do a lot of that. So if all of a sudden I start talking to atheists and you're like, does Izzy think I'm an atheist? Does Izzy think one of us is an atheist? No, it's just that's a direction I'm going to start going in my messages. And hopefully that will equip us also to engage in dialogue with our neighbors, our co-workers, our friends who are atheists. Because we as a community are in an ongoing dialogue with the world around us. We as individuals are in an ongoing conversation with people that think radically different than us. And it would be nice if even in my messages and what we talk about here, that's kind of a part of it. So we're not just a little enclave of biblical truth. We're not only a bastion of correct doctrine, but we also say there are people who don't believe this, and this is what they believe, and let's compare these two concepts. So I'd like to grow in that area. So that's something you're going to be hearing more from me. Another thing you're probably going to be seeing more of are good music videos. Because I really love music videos. I was telling Genevieve this last week, a song is a very powerful form of communication because, number one, it's poetry, and the dimension of poetry is powerful in and of itself. It isn't just prose. It isn't just talking. It's communicating in a creative way, in a pithy way, in a way that's often unlocks something in your brain. That's poetry. But when you put poetry to music, it becomes multidimensional. And it literally engages both hemispheres of your brain, and that's why you can't get a song out of your head. Because it's engaging both hemispheres of your brain, your right and your left brain. And it just locks in. Now, when you take a song that is composed of both poetry and music, and you put it to visual, like to a visual illustration, maybe a story that illustrates the message of the song, it is one of the most powerful forms of communication that you have. There's a reason that MTV went huge in the 90s. It's because it engaged people. It engaged their minds. It really grabbed their hearts, for better or worse. And there's something to that. So I love music videos. Music videos unlock something in my heart in a way that few other things do. Music videos can move me and make me cry when almost nothing else can do that. And sometimes I'll see a music video, let's say by a Christian band or even by a secular band, and I'll say, wow, the lyrics to that song, that's interesting that maybe this is something that appeals to most hearts in the world, or that's popular. Why is this popular? Or if it's Christian and it just has an awesome message of the gospel, wow, I love that. And I want to share more things like that with you as a community. So you might be seeing more music videos and stuff from me also. So those are a couple things that are going through my mind, a couple things that I'm probably going to be bringing into my messages more. So give you that as a little trailer, a little heads up for that.